After my husband's solemn funeral, I went to my nephew's birthday party. Suddenly, my sister blurted out, "My son is your husband's." According to the will, I get half the house, which is worth $600, 000. I just replied, okay. And I could barely hold back a smile because my husband, "Hello, my darlings. Drop what you're doing for a minute. I want to tell you a story that will make you see the people closest to you in a different light." I cried when I heard this tale. Write to us from wherever you're watching. We wish you a pleasant listen. After my husband's funeral, I went to my nephew's birthday party. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? How can you go to a party when your world has just collapsed, but when you're 35 and your husband was only 42, the normal rules of life stop applying. Everything becomes absurd. It had been exactly 1 week since I'd become a widow. What a word. Widow. Old, dusty like a grandmother's china cabinet filled with last-century figurines. And now that's me, the widow Sophia Wallace. And I still have half a life ahead of me with that label. I didn't want to go anywhere, of course. I wanted to stay home buried in the pillow that still held the scent of Leo. A mix of the woodsy cologne I'd bring him from my business trips, cigarette smoke. He'd sneak them on the fire escape thinking I didn't know, and something indefinably him so familiar. But my sister called the night before. "You have to come to Sam's birthday." Claire didn't ask. She stated it with that authoritative tone she'd mastered since high school when she was class president. "The kid is turning 5. He keeps asking for you. He shouldn't have to suffer because of your grief." I tried to refuse, but what was the point? My sister always got her way. That's how it was in our family. Claire's the youngest, let her have it. Claire has a difficult personality, be the bigger person. Claire is very emotional, don't argue with her. And I always gave in. I was the bigger person. I didn't argue. It was habit. "Sam is waiting for you," she added, with that special emphasis on the word waiting, designed to trigger my guilt. And of course it did. And Mom and Dad are worried too. They want to see that you're holding up. I agreed, though. Everything inside me recoiled at the idea of having to smile, nod through pitying glances, and pretend that life went on, as if you could just go on after Leo died. He didn't get sick. He didn't fade over months, giving me time to accept. He just died. An aneurysm, the doctor said. Instantly. That morning we were having coffee in our small kitchen overlooking the brick alley of our South End brownstone, talking about plans for the weekend. Leo wanted to go to Charleston to show me a restored historic home he was consulting on. Imagine, Sophie, there are bricks in that foundation from the 1700s. I touched them with my own hands. History right under your fingertips. And by that evening I was identifying his body at the morgue. My God, I still can't believe it. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time trying to decide what to wear. The black sheath dress was too funereal for a child's party. The navy blue suit I wore to my CPA firm was too formal. I finally settled on a knee-length gray wool dress, simple, decent, suitable for the chilly Boston spring. Leo loved that dress. He said it brought out the gray in my eyes. "My steel," he'd joke, wrapping his arms around my waist. I left our apartment in the heart of Boston. An old brownstone, high ceilings, thick walls you could barely hear the neighbors. We fell in love with the place at first sight, even though it needed a complete renovation. We spent all our savings, took out a 5-year mortgage, but we made it exactly as we'd dreamed. We restored the crown molding sourced reclaimed antique hardwood floors, even kept the old marble fireplace in the corner of the living room, though it no longer worked. Leo called our home a time machine. You step outside and you're in the Boston of a century ago. At the entrance, I ran into Mrs. Gable from the 5th floor, a neighbor who knew everything about everyone, always peeking from her window, monitoring the comings and goings. "Sophia, dear," she lamented, grabbing my hand with her gnarled fingers. "How is it possible? Such a good man, so proper. Didn't drink, didn't smoke." I kept quiet about the cigarettes on the fire escape. That was our little secret, Leo's and mine, like so many other things. "Stay strong, my girl. It's a long road. You'll find someone else yet." I pulled my hand away and hurried to the T station. Those were exactly the conversations I dreaded. My parents' apartment was on the other side of the city in Quincy, a middle-class neighborhood in a generic building we moved to in '87. Dad got the apartment as part of his seniority package at the factory. 3 bedrooms felt like a palace after the cramped 2-bedroom on the outskirts of the city. I walked up the familiar stairs. The elevator only worked half the time, and Claire and I used to race to see who could get to the 6th floor first. I tried to put myself in the right frame of mind. Smile. Don't cry. Don't make a scene. For Sam, for my parents, and honestly for myself. Because if I broke, I would shatter completely, and there would be no force strong enough to put me back together. My mom, Helen, opened the door. She's a retired teacher, the same highlighted bob she gets every month at the same neighborhood salon. The same pearl necklace around her neck, a gift from Dad for their silver anniversary. Sophia, she sighed, pulling me into a tight hug. She smelled of laundry starch and her classic perfume, which she stubbornly kept using despite all my attempts to gift her something more modern. Why all those chemical smells, she'd say. This is a real perfume, not like that junk they sell now. Dad Thomas, a retired engineer, was in the hallway, tall, straight, backed with a military bearing, though he never served. He shook my hand silently, unshed tears in his eyes. He loved Leo. They would spend hours together fixing an old ham radio Dad had kept since the 70s. Leo would find parts at flea markets, and they'd sit on the balcony poring over schematics and replacing vacuum tubes. "How are you, honey?" he asked quietly. "Getting by, Dad," I lied. "That's good," he nodded. "Leo would have wanted you to keep going. He was a real man, dependable." I nodded, unable to answer. How could I keep going? I couldn't. 35 years old and my whole life in pieces. 13 years together, 10 of them married. We met at a charity auction at the Museum of Fine Arts. I was helping with the accounting. He was presenting a restoration project for an old cathedral. Our first date was a walk along the Charles River Esplanade. He spent half a month's salary to impress me. He told me he loved me on the roof of a Beacon Hill apartment he'd somehow gotten us access to. He proposed in the Boston Public Garden with the ring hidden in a bouquet of wildflowers. And then, our cozy little world which we built brick by brick, the renovation trips plans. Only one thing was missing: children. We dreamed of them so much, tried so hard. Countless doctors' tests, procedures, and finally a terrible diagnosis for Leo, after which it became clear we would never have children of our own. We talked about adopting, but always put it off. First, finish the renovation, then get more financially stable, then what would our parents think, and now it's too late. Everything is too late. In the living room, the guests were already gathered. A couple of neighbors, Claire's friends from college inseparable, Claire, Emma, and Catherine, and the parents of kids from Sam's preschool. The table was set, balloons floated near the ceiling. A banner reading "Happy Birthday, Sam" was handmade by Claire. She was always good at that stuff. Everything was as it always was, except my husband would never sit at that table again. He wouldn't entertain his nephew with coin tricks or tell an anecdote from his life as a restoration architect. He wouldn't make his favorite toast to strong walls and a warm hearth, which he repeated at every family celebration. His laugh wouldn't be there, nor his hand on my shoulder, nor his whisper, "Hang in there, we'll be home soon," after 4 hours of a family gathering. Sam, a curly-haired 5-year-old with Claire's green eyes and a snub nose, ran to me as soon as I entered the room. Aunt Sophie, look what I got. He showed me a toy bulldozer. But where's Uncle Leo? He promised to show me how to solder wires." The room fell silent. You could hear the tick-tock of the old grandfather clock in the hall, a family heirloom. Claire startled so much she almost dropped a tray of mini quiches. "Sam, I already explained," she began with a forced smile. "Uncle Leo went far, far away. On a trip. Like when Daddy Mark goes." Mark was Sam's father, from whom Claire had separated shortly after the boy was born. He was a long-haul trucker, rarely showed up, sent money sporadically. For Sam, his dad was like Santa Claus. He came once every 6 months with gifts, threw a party, and disappeared. I knelt in front of my nephew and took his small hands in mine. They were warm and sticky from candy. "No, sweetie, Uncle Leo, I couldn't bring myself to say the word to a child. Death. Dead. Passed away." Any version sounded horribly wrong when it was about someone who just a week ago was teaching him to throw paper airplanes from the balcony. "He's in the sky now. And he's watching over you from up there." "Like an astronaut?" Sam asked, seriously, frowning. The exact same way Leo frowned when he was concentrating on a difficult problem. The gesture pierced my heart. "Yes, a little like an astronaut," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "Except, you don't come back from there. Ever." Ever a glimmer of understanding shone in his green eyes. "Ever," I confirmed, and my voice trembled. Claire quickly scooped him up into her arms. "All right, young man, time to blow out the candles on the cake. Make a wish." The party continued. A chocolate cake with 5 candles, Claire's specialty. She was always a great baker. The presents, the children's laughter, the adults' conversations. I sat in a corner clutching a cup of cold tea, thinking about how Leo would never see Sam grow up. He loved him so much. He always said that if we had a son, he'd want him to be just as restless and curious. When the guests started to leave, I prepared to go home too. To our empty brownstone in Boston, where we moved in with Leo 10 years ago and where every corner was saturated with memories of him. I wanted to be alone to make his favorite tea in the old glass, with the etching of the Old North Church, wrap myself in a blanket and look through our old photos. Cheesy, but I needed that ritual. And just then, as I was in the entryway putting on my coat, Claire suddenly asked everyone remaining not to leave. Her voice sounded strangely solemn, and I immediately sensed something bad was coming. I always had a sixth sense for Claire's dramatic moments. Ever since we were kids, she'd say something that would make the adults blush, and I'd spend the next week looking at the floor mortified for my sister. "I have an important announcement," she said, looking not at me but over my head. "I think now is the time to tell the truth since we're all here." Mom looked at her with concern. "Claire, don't you think today isn't the right day? Sophia is in mourning." "No, Mom, especially today." Claire lifted her chin with that stubbornness she'd had since she was a little girl about to do something forbidden, since we're talking about inheritance and all that. "What inheritance?" I was surprised. No one had been talking about inheritance. "We need to," Claire cut in. "Sam is Leo's son." A silence so thick it felt like you could touch it fell over the room. The old grandfather clock suddenly stopped ticking, or at least it seemed that way to me. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I blurted, feeling the floor give way beneath me. "The truth." Claire looked me straight in the eye, green against my gray. Our eternal staring contest. "Leo and I had a brief affair when you two were temporarily separated 6 years ago. Remember when you went to a 2-month work training in Chicago? Well, that's when it happened. Sam is his son, and by law he's entitled to his father's inheritance." I glanced at my nephew. He was sitting on the floor playing with his new bulldozer, thankfully not listening to the adult conversation. "Are you crazy?" Dad's voice cut through the silence. "What kind of nonsense is this?" "It's not nonsense," Claire said, pulling a folded paper from her purse. "I have a will." Leo acknowledged his paternity. "I'm entitled to half the brownstone $600, 000, as the representative of his son." I stepped forward and snatched the paper from her hands. Something resembling a will. A notary's seal. A signature that vaguely resembled Leo's. "This is a fake," I said firmly. "Have the notary verify it if you don't believe me," Claire shrugged. "But believe me, little sister, it's better to settle this peacefully without lawyers. Sam is a direct heir. A DNA test will confirm it." A chill ran down my spine. And then very slowly, a cold, bitter smile appeared on my lips. A smile I didn't even know I was capable of. Okay, I said, barely containing the smirk. "Sure, Claire. Whatever you say." I handed her back the paper and turned towards the door. "And that's it," she shouted after me. "You're not going to protest, make a scene." I turned in the doorway. "What for? It's an obvious lie." "Why is it obvious?" Claire crossed her arms. "You know, Leo always had a soft spot for me, even before your wedding." "I know," I nodded. "And I also know something else. Something you don't know. Because my husband was completely sterile after a surgery he had in his youth. And that was our biggest secret and our greatest pain. A secret that not even our parents knew. A secret that is now going to work in my favor. Leaving my parents' apartment, I didn't call an Uber, even though it had grown dark, and a spring drizzle was falling over the city. I needed to walk, to breathe, to sort through my thoughts. A residential neighborhood, the kind of suburb that in the 80s was considered the edge of Boston and was now just another stop on the commuter rail among thousands. Tall apartment buildings, identical playgrounds, soulless strip malls, and a pharmacy on every corner. Everything the same as it was 30 years ago, just with brighter signs and more cars. I walked through the familiar courtyards, dodging puddles, a whirlwind of thoughts in my head. Claire, Leo, Sam, the will, $600, 000, sterility, betrayal, a lie. Leo always said Claire was a handful. "Your sister is like a hurricane," he'd joke. "You never know where she's going to hit or what damage she'll cause." But this, not even in my worst nightmares, could I have imagined she was capable of something so vile. To claim she had an affair with my husband, that Sam was his son, that she was entitled to our brownstone, the brownstone in the heart of Boston. It all started with that place. When Leo and I first got married, we rented a tiny apartment on the outskirts. An old house, nosy neighbors, all that charm. I remember the day so clearly when our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Martinez, a sweet 80-year-old retired ballerina, invited us for tea. "Kids," she said, "I have a proposal. My niece in Miami knows a realtor. They're selling a place downtown. It's old, neglected, but the ceilings are high and the location is prime." And best of all, it's cheap because the owner died and the heirs in Florida need the cash fast. We went to see it without much hope. A prime location, the price must be through the roof. But Mrs. Martinez was right. The place was a wreck. No updates since the 70 SA broken window and one-room wiring that would scare any electrician and cockroaches the size of small rodents. But the potential soaring ceilings with crown molding windows so wide you could sit in them and read heavy original doors with brass knobs, and most importantly, the view of the old Boston we loved so much. We took out a 5-year mortgage, putting down all our savings as a deposit. Leo's parents helped with a portion. His dad, an architecture professor, understood the value of such gems. Mine also pitched in what they could, selling a small lake house my mom had inherited. We did the renovation ourselves on weekends and nights, saving on everything, even food. We lived on pasta for months. Leo learned to tile. I learned to hang wallpaper and paint. We only hired professionals for the heavy lifting, rewiring, plumbing, reinforcing beams. It was a tough but happy time. We worked side by side, dreaming of living there for many years, raising children in that place, growing old together, sitting on our windowsill, watching old Boston go by. Children. That was our deepest wound. A year after the wedding, we started trying for a baby. I stopped taking birth control. We tracked my fertile days, we tried, we waited. A year passed, nothing. Another 6 months, nothing. And then the doctor visits began. First me, tests, ultrasounds, checkups. Everything was fine. Then Leo. And that's when they found it. When he was 16, he'd had a complication from a routine appendectomy, a severe infection that required a second, more invasive surgery. Back then, especially in the small town where Leo grew up, such procedures were sometimes done haphazardly. Something went wrong, complications arose, and in the end, a total blockage. In short, sperm were produced, but they couldn't get out. Absolute sterility with no chance of recovery. When they gave us the diagnosis, we didn't speak for days. We just existed in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. For Leo, it was a terrible blow to his pride. He, so solid, so dependable, a real man, as my dad would say, suddenly felt incomplete. He avoided my gaze, spent sleepless nights, and on the third day he told me, "I'll understand if you want a divorce." That day, for the first time in my life, I hit him. I slapped him across the face and screamed, "Are you an idiot? Do you think I'm just desperate to get pregnant? I love you, not your sperm." We cried together, and then we started looking at options. IVF, with a donor surrogacy adoption. But everything came up against money and time. We were drowning in debt and renovations, working ourselves to the bone. We decided to postpone it until we were more stable. And time passed, and the conversation about children became rarer until it became one of those topics you don't touch, so as not to reopen old wounds. Our diagnosis became our secret. We didn't tell our parents. Why make them suffer? We didn't tell our friends. We didn't want their pity. We learned to give vague answers when asked about kids' career, the renovation, all in good time. And only between us, in moments of deep intimacy, did we confess that we still wanted a child and that one day we would find a way. Now that secret would be my weapon against Claire's lie. But first I needed proof. The documents with Leo's diagnosis were in a safe deposit box at the bank. We rented it when we took out the mortgage to keep all the important documents for the brownstone there, just in case Leo would say, "You never know. If there's a fire or a flood, the papers will be safe." There was a grim irony in those words. It wasn't the brownstone, it was him who was gone. I wiped away my tears. This was no time to fall apart. I had a plan. As I neared the tea station, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number of Oliver, our college friend who had become a successful family law attorney. "Oliver, it's Sophia," I said when he answered. "Sorry to call so late." "Sophia, please don't apologize." His voice was full of sincere compassion. "How are you?" "Not great, to be honest. Listen, I need a consultation about inheritance. I think I'm in for some trouble." "What kind of trouble?" The lawyer's tone crept into his voice. "My sister is claiming her son is Leo's and is demanding half the brownstone." The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "Your sister," Claire Oliver managed to say. "Is this a joke?" "I wish. She even has some kind of will." Okay, Oliver was in full professional mode now. "Tomorrow at 10 in my office. You remember the address on Newbury Street, and bring every document you have. Marriage certificate papers for the brownstone, that will, if you can get it." He hesitated a moment. "I know it's hard, but we'll also need Leo's death certificate." "Okay," I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "See you tomorrow." I got on the train, heading downtown. The car was almost empty. A weekday, late at night, most people were already home. Across from me, a young couple held hands and stole kisses. I turned my face to the window where my reflection stared back at me in the dark. A drawn face with dark circles under my eyes. 35, but I looked 45. When I got home, the first thing I did was check for the key to the safe deposit box. It was in its place inside the small document box in our home safe. The other key was on my keychain. Tomorrow morning before seeing Oliver, I'd stop by the bank. The apartment greeted me with silence. Before, when I came home, there was always some sound. Leo working late, drafting plans on his computer, talking to clients on the phone, putting on an old vinyl record he collected, classic rock, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the Eagles. Now silence, a crushing silence. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on, moving on autopilot. In the fridge, traces of a former life, a container of the soup I'd made last Sunday, a yogurt Leo liked, a bottle of white wine opened for our last dinner together. I slammed the door shut, unable to look at those memories. I made tea in his glass mug with the antique silver holder, etched with the image of the Old North Church. Leo had found it at a flea market in Cambridge, and from then on, only drank tea from it. A real Boston mug, he'd joke. I went out onto the fire escape with my tea wrapped in a blanket. The spring night in Boston spread out below, the glow of streetlights, few passers-by, the dark shadows of old trees. We had spent so many nights out here together, dreaming, making plans, or just watching the city in silence, and now I was alone, and instead of future plans, I had a plan for justice. No, not revenge, justice. I would not let Claire tarnish Leo's memory or steal what we built together. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my photos. Here we are at Boston Common last winter, here at his parents' house in the Berkshires, here in Charleston on the coast, celebrating our 5th anniversary, happy in love even after so many years together. How dare she say she had an affair with him? And then it hit me. 6 years ago, when Claire claimed she supposedly got pregnant by Leo, I really was away. 2 months in Chicago for a training on new accounting software. And during that time, Leo spent a lot of time with my parents. He helped my dad with repairs around the house. He took my mom to the doctor when her arthritis flared up. And Claire was always around offering to help, inviting Leo over for dinner. Could it be? No, impossible. Leo wouldn't do that. He couldn't. I knew him better than anyone. And besides, I knew Sam couldn't be his son. Physically impossible. But Claire didn't know that. And that's where things got interesting. I took a sip of the now cold tea and looked at the clock. Almost midnight. Tomorrow would be a tough day. I had to gather all the documents, go to the bank for Leo's medical records, meet with Oliver, and then I would decide how to play my cards. I went back inside, closing the door to the fire escape. For a second, I thought I heard Leo's footsteps from the bedroom. His particular way of walking with a slight drag in his right leg, a souvenir from a skiing accident. But it was just the floorboards creaking in the draft. In the bedroom, I didn't turn on the main light, just the bedside lamp, the one we bought at a flea market with a stained glass shade in an Art Deco style. I put on my pajamas, well, actually Leo's Pink Floyd t-shirt, which I'd been sleeping in for the past week because it still held his scent. Lying in bed, I mentally rehearsed the plan for the next day. Bank documents, Oliver. And then I'd have to decide what to do about Claire. Expose her immediately or let her dig herself deeper into her lie. Tell my parents the truth about Leo's sterility or keep our secret. And what about Sam? He wasn't to blame for any of this. He was just a little boy who adored his uncle. Sleep wouldn't come. I got up and walked through the apartment. Our apartment. My last refuge where everything reminded me of a happiness that would never return. In the living room hung our pride and joy, a watercolor of old Boston that Leo had bought at an auction, the work of an unknown artist from the early 20th century. A view of Beacon Hill, the State House dome in the background, pigeons in the park. Look, Sophie, Leo used to say it's the view from our neighborhood. It means that 100 years ago, an artist stood more or less where our house is today and painted what he saw. And now this painting has come home. The circle is complete. On the mantelpiece, framed photos. Our wedding. Me in a simple white dress, Leo in a dark blue suit. Both of us laughing because it started to rain right at that moment. The photographer was cursing, and we were happy. Rain on your wedding day, good luck for sure. Family photos. My parents, Leo's parents, all of us together at their house in the Berkshires. And a photo with Sam. Leo was carrying the 3-year-old on his shoulders, both of them roaring with laughter. He truly loved him. That was true. He often said, If we had a son, I'd want him to be just as mischievous and curious. Lately, we had started talking about having a child again. The brownstone was almost paid off. The renovation was finished. We were financially stable. I had been promoted to CFO at my firm. Leo had opened his own architectural restoration practice, and he was flooded with projects. We were already looking at adoption agency websites, reading stories from adoptive parents. This year, Leo said 2 weeks before he died, "This year we'll do it." We didn't. We ran out of time. I went back to the bedroom. I lay down, closed my eyes. My sister's face appeared before me. With that self-satisfied smirk, her green eyes narrowed, her chin held high. All her life, she wanted something of mine. Our parents' attention, my toys, later boyfriends, jobs. Always competing, envying, trying to prove she was better. And now she wanted the most precious things, Leo's memory, our home, our future. She wouldn't succeed. This time I wouldn't give in. This time I had proof, and I would use it to put Claire in her place once and for all. With that thought, I finally drifted into a restless sleep in which Leo was calling my name, and I couldn't reach him because between us stood Claire holding Sam in her arms, laughing and laughing and laughing. The morning dawned damp and cold, a typical Boston spring, no longer winter but still far from warm. I woke up with a headache and the strange feeling that Leo was still in the apartment. Those first few seconds after opening my eyes were the worst. That moment when consciousness hasn't fully kicked in and you think everything is still the same, that any minute he'll walk in with 2 cups of coffee just like every morning. But reality is unforgiving. Leo was gone and I had an important day ahead of me. I forced myself to get up, shower, get dressed. I chose a severe gray suit, the same one from his funeral. It felt symbolic. Today I would begin to bury another part of my life, my relationship with my sister. "You're here bright and early," the bank guard said, as I walked in right at 9 a.m. When they opened, an older woman with a tired gaze and gray hair neatly coiffed, probably my age, but she looked older. Leo and I had an account at this bank and the safe deposit box too. A small private bank in downtown Boston in an old building with a historic feel. Moldings on the ceilings, marble windowsills, stained glass in the windows. Leo chose it precisely for that atmosphere. "I need to access my safe deposit box," I said, handing over my ID and the access card. The woman verified the details and nodded. "Go ahead, Mrs. Wallace. Valerie will assist you." A young employee, Valerie, led me to the vault. I walked behind her, clutching the key to the box in my hand. My heels clicked on the marble floor, echoing in the empty morning corridors. Valerie chattered about the rain, about how early it had warmed up this year. I nodded without listening. The vault was a separate room, with metal drawers of various sizes embedded in the walls. Valerie inserted her key into our box's lock. I inserted mine. 2 turns, and the metal drawer slid open. "I'll wait outside," the young woman said. "Let me know when you're finished." I was alone. Inside the box, neat stacks of documents in clear folders, everything systematized, labeled in Leo's clear architect's handwriting. Papers for the brownstone insurance policies, copies of birth and marriage certificates. The real will signed before a notary 3 years ago where Leo left everything to me, the paid-off mortgage contract, and in a corner a blue folder labeled Medical Documents. I took out the folder and opened it. There they were. All the reports from Leo's diagnosis, the medical conclusions, the semen analysis results confirming azoospermia, a complete absence of sperm in the ejaculate. The most recent one was dated last year. We had ourselves checked every so often with the secret hope of a miracle that never came. I put the entire folder in my purse. Then I took Leo's real will. I would need it for the meeting with Oliver. I left the rest in the box. I had our marriage certificate at home. The rest wasn't necessary for now. I was about to close the box when I noticed an envelope I had never seen before, thick, cream-colored paper with no writing on it. I opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, Leo's handwriting. "Sophie, my love. If you are reading this letter, it means something has happened to me. I hope we are just going through old papers 30 years from now and you are laughing at my paranoia. But if not, I want you to know these 13 years with you were the best of my life. You gave me everything a man could dream of. Love, support, a home, a purpose. The only thing I couldn't give you was a child, and that is my deepest regret. But there is something I must tell you. Your sister. 6 months ago when you went to Chicago for work, she came over saying she was looking for some of Mom's recipes. She drank almost a whole bottle of wine and started coming on to me. She said she had always wanted me, that you would never know, that it would be our secret. I threw her out, but she threatened to make something up to break us apart if I told you. I didn't want to worry you or ruin your relationship with her, so I kept quiet. But now I think I was wrong. Your sister is dangerous, Sophie. Be careful with her. Whatever happens, remember I only ever loved you. Always. Your Leo. The date was from 3 months ago. I sat there in the vault, clutching the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my cheeks. All this time he knew. He suspected Claire was up to something and wanted to warn me to protect me even after he was gone. Mrs. Wallace, are you all right? Valerie's voice from the doorway brought me back to reality. Yes, I'm coming out now, I replied, wiping my tears. I carefully folded the letter and put it in my purse. Leaving the bank, I immediately called Oliver. I'm on my way to your office. I have something important. Oliver's office was in an old building on Newbury Street, a small family law practice. Leo and I had helped him when he was just starting out. Leo designed the office renovation. I handled his books. College friends always supporting each other. Oliver met me at the reception, tall, broad-shouldered with a neatly trimmed beard and an impeccable suit. In college, he'd been a bit of a rebel, always in faded jeans with a guitar slung over his shoulder. Now he was a prestigious lawyer, one of the best in Boston for family law. Sophia, he hugged me tightly. How are you holding up? Trying my best, I replied with a weak smile. His office was minimalist and serious. No extra frills, just a desk chairs, a bookshelf with legal texts, and a few diplomas on the wall. And a framed photo, the three of us, Leo, him, and me 10 years ago at the opening of this very office, smiling with glasses of champagne. Tell me, Oliver said, sitting across from me, his hands clasped on the desk. I laid out all the documents in front of him, Leo's real will, the medical reports proving his infertility, and the letter I found in the box. Here it is, I said. Everything I have. Oliver reviewed each paper, carefully lingering on the medical reports. So Leo was... Yes, I nodded. Completely sterile, no possibility of fathering a child. Sam can't be his son. And the supposed will your sister showed you. I didn't see it in detail, just a glance, but everything suggests it's a forgery. Oliver leaned back in his chair, drumming his fingers on the table. You know that's a serious accusation. Forging a will is a felony. Are you prepared to go all the way? I thought about it. Was I really ready to take my own sister to court, to send her to prison, to make Sam the son of a convict? I don't know, I confessed. I want justice, but I don't want to destroy the boy's life. Then let's take it one step at a time. Oliver switched back to lawyer mode. First, we'll have an informal meeting with your sister. We'll show her the evidence, explain the consequences. Maybe she'll come to her senses. If not, then we'll consider legal action. Okay, I agreed. But there's something else that worries me. Why is she doing this? Claire has always been complicated, but she's never gone this far. Money, Oliver suggested. $600,000 is not a small amount. Yes, but I shook my head. It's too desperate a move. There must be another reason. I need to know what's going on in her life. I can hire a private investigator, Oliver proposed. He can find out about her financial situation, any debts problems. That will give us an idea of her motives and could give us leverage. Do it, I said decisively. I want to know what my sister has gotten herself into and why she decided to use my husband's memory for her own ends. Oliver made a note in his legal pad. Okay, give me 2 or 3 days to get some information. In the meantime, do nothing. Don't call her, don't see her, don't talk about it with your parents. Act as if nothing happened. And if she contacts me, tell her you're thinking about what she said, that you need time. I nodded. The plan was sensible. Thank you, Oliver. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what friends are for, he smiled, then added suddenly, Leo would be proud of you. You're strong, Sophia. Stronger than you think. I left Oliver's office with mixed feelings. On one hand, anger at Claire, a desire for immediate justice. On the other, a strange emptiness, as if all this was happening not to me but to someone else and I was just watching from the sidelines. The weather had gotten worse. The drizzle had turned into a downpour. I stood under the awning of the entrance, debating whether to call an Uber or walk to the T station when my phone rang. Mom. Sophia, how are you? Her voice sounded worried. Your father and I are concerned. I'm fine, Mom. Really, I lied. I'm working a little bit. That's good that you're working, she approved. Don't stay home alone, you'll get dark thoughts. Listen, I need to ask you something. Can you come over today? Your father isn't well. What happened? I tensed up instantly. He had a pain in his chest. He took his nitroglycerin. It's a little better now, but you know how he hates doctors. Maybe you can convince him. He listens to you. Of course, Mom. I'll be there this afternoon. I hung up with a pang of anxiety. Dad was old school, raised with the idea that you tough it out. He refused to go to the doctor, preferring home remedies and self-healing. If his heart was acting up, it was serious. And then a thought struck me. What if the pain was Claire's fault? What if the stress of her words triggered the attack? Another wave of fury washed over me. It wasn't enough that she was trying to take my apartment. Now she was also risking my parents' health with her crazy schemes. I hailed a cab and went home. I had to change and gather myself before going to see them. On the way, I replayed Leo's letter in my head. Your sister is dangerous. He knew. He sensed it. He tried to warn me. The downpour intensified. Water streamed down the taxi windows, blurring the city's shapes. Boston traffic, the usual. The driver, an older man with a white mustache, turned on the radio. Oldies. The Beatles, the Eagles, Billy Joel, the music of my childhood. Those were good times, the driver sighed, catching my eye in the rearview mirror. Now everyone's ready to rip each other's heads off for a buck. But before it was different, more human. I remained silent. I wondered what he would say if he knew my own sister wanted to take my apartment using my dead husband's name. Were those times really more human, or did people just not talk about these things and family scandals were swept under the rug? At home, I changed into jeans and a sweater. My parents' apartment was always cold. My dad was frugal with the heating a habit from leaner times. I packed a small bag of provisions, some sharp cheddar for him, fresh strawberries for Mom, a jar of the blackberry jam I'd made in the fall, and a bottle of whiskey, his favorite single, malt scotch, just like old times. Before leaving, I stopped in front of the hallway mirror. A haggard woman looked back at me, dark circles, tight lips. When did I get so old? 1 week without Leo, and I look 10 years older. You're strong, Sophia. Stronger than you think. Oliver's words echoed in my mind. Well, it was time to prove it. I buttoned my coat, grabbed an umbrella, and walked out, closing the door decisively behind me. Ahead of me lay a conversation with my parents and the first step toward justice. I arrived at my parents' apartment in Quincy at 6 in the evening. It was still raining, turning the streets into rivers. The buses threw up sprays of water with their tires, pedestrians hugged the walls under their umbrellas. I walked up to the 6th floor. The elevator, as usual, was out of service, an old childhood habit counting the steps. 108. Claire and I used to run up them, taking them 2 at a time. Now I was panting at each landing. Mom opened the door wearing the same floral housecoat I'd known my whole life. A ladle was in her hand. The smell of soup wafted from the kitchen. Wednesdays were always soup night, a tradition as fixed as the seasons. Sophia, she hugged me, smelling of classic perfume and fresh herbs. Come in, honey. Your father's in the living room. Dad was in his favorite armchair by the window, old, upholstered in worn brown velvet, the seat sunk in the armrests, shiny from use. He was reading the Boston Globe. He'd had a subscription since the 80s, refusing to get his news online. You can hold a newspaper, he'd say. This internet stuff of yours, it's here today, gone tomorrow. Dad. I went over and kissed his cheek rough with a day's stubble. How are you? Fine, he grumbled, putting the paper aside. Your mother made a drama out of nothing. Just a little twinge. Who doesn't get those? A twinge that left you as pale as a sheet, Mom retorted from the kitchen. I could barely find the nitroglycerin pills, you hide them all over the place. Bah, he waved his hand dismissively. At my age, half the country carries nitro in their pocket. Nothing unusual. I sat on the sofa across from him. Dad, you should see a doctor, just in case. Not a chance. He straightened up in his chair, and I noticed a fleeting grimace of pain. Those doctors, all they do is take your money and tell you to come back in 6 months. I know their game. Arguing was useless. He was 71. He'd worked his whole life as an engineer at the factory until the layoffs. After that, he'd made do with odd jobs, repairing appliances, working as a security guard. Proud, stubborn, from a generation for whom admitting weakness was worse than death. I brought you whiskey, I said, pulling out the bottle. The kind you like. His eyes lit up. Now, that's medicine, not those pills. Just a little, Mom warned, coming in with a tray. After the nitroglycerin, you can't have much. On the tray were 3 small crystal glasses from the set they'd received for their wedding 45 years ago. Leo had loved them. He said they had a special ring to them, like music from another century. We toasted to us, as always. I felt the burn of the drink go down my throat, warming me from the inside. Leo couldn't stand whiskey. He preferred a good wine. Whiskey is coarse, he'd say. Wine requires a palate and understanding. Another memory that now lived only in me. Mom, let's have dinner, I said, trying to change the subject. Of course, she bustled. The soup is ready. And I made a pie, your favorite. During dinner, we talked about the weather, the rising prices, the neighbors, the usual topics of family gatherings. I was waiting for my parents to bring up Claire, but they carefully avoided the conversation. Only when Mom went to the kitchen for tea did Dad lean towards me and ask in a low voice, what did Claire make up about that inheritance? I tensed. What did she tell you? Nothing, he shook his head. After that night, she hasn't called or come by. But I'm not blind, Sophia. I can see something's wrong. Sam Leo's son. Pure nonsense. Nonsense, I agreed. And soon everyone will understand that. You, Dad, hesitated, searching for the words. You be firm with her. It's always been this way. She does something, then runs under your mother's wing and all is forgiven. This time, don't let her get away with it. I looked at him surprised. He had always been softer on Claire than on me. He always defended her, justified her. Claire is the youngest. Claire is very emotional. Claire has an explosive personality. What can you do? I won't, Dad, I said firmly. This time she's crossed every line. He nodded, and in his eyes I saw something new. Respect, pride, support. Mom returned with tea and a pie. She'd bought it from the corner bakery. She knew I liked it. We went back to safe topics. The upcoming gardening season, the new TV drama, the neighbor from the 5th floor who'd gotten a cat despite the no pets rule. And Claire, I asked casually when the conversation lulled, have you spoken to her since that night? My parents exchanged a look. She called this morning, Mom said reluctantly. She asked if you'd said anything about the inheritance. And what did you tell her? That it's your business and we're not getting involved, Dad cut in. Enough meddling in your lives. You've been adults for a long time. Mom sighed. Sophia, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Claire was always a difficult child. You know that. I know, Mom. But being a difficult child is one thing, and blatantly lying to steal what isn't hers is something else entirely. She says it's the truth, Mom whispered, that she had an affair with Leo. When you were in Chicago, I felt anger tighten my throat. And you believe her. I don't know what to believe. Her voice broke with tears. You say one thing, she says another. You're my 2 daughters. How can I choose? And doesn't it seem strange to you, I said, slowly controlling myself, that Claire is only saying this now, just when Leo is dead and can't defend himself? She says she was scared, Mom mumbled, not looking at me, that she wanted to protect you and that now she had to speak up because the inheritance issue became serious. Sam was born 6 years ago, I replied calmly, though my voice was burning. If he had been Leo's, do you think Claire would have stayed quiet all this time? Wouldn't she have demanded child support, help, legal recognition? Mom was silent, fiddling with the tablecloth. And Mark, I asked. Sam's real father. He went off somewhere, Mom said with a vague gesture. To Canada or Mexico. Still trucking. Claire says she hasn't gotten any money from him in over a year. There it was. The motive. Money. Always money. Mom, Dad, I looked at them both. I know you want to stay out of it and I respect that, but there's something you need to know. I took the most recent copy of Leo's medical report from my purse from last year and handed it to them. Look, I said. Leo was sterile. Totally and irreversibly since he was a teenager. A botched surgery left him unable to have children. Ever. Under any circumstances. Mom took the paper with trembling hands, put on her glasses and read. Dad leaned over her shoulder, mumbling as he tried to decipher the medical terms. My God, Mom exclaimed. So that's why you two... Yes, I nodded. That's why we never had children. And that's why Sam cannot be Leo's. It's a medical fact, indisputable. But why did you keep it a secret? Mom's eyes filled with tears. We would have understood, supported you. It was our pain, Mom, I replied softly. Leo was ashamed. He felt incomplete. He didn't want anyone to know. Nonsense, Dad grumbled, though he wiped away a tear on the sly. He was complete. A man like few others. Golden hands, a brilliant mind. I know, Dad. But it was important to him. Mom reread the report over and over as if she still couldn't believe it. So Claire is lying. Yes, Mom. She's lying consciously. But why? Her voice was genuinely perplexed. Why would she make something like that up? I don't know yet, I answered. But I'm going to find out. And I'm going to put an end to this story. We stayed in the kitchen for a long time. My parents asked me about Leo's diagnosis, about how we had lived with it, why we hadn't adopted. I answered honestly. For the first time in many years, I spoke openly to them about that side of our life with Leo. We were going to, I said. This year, Leo was finally ready. He had accepted his situation. We had even started gathering the documents. My voice broke and I fell silent. Mom put her arm around my shoulders. Sophia, my dear daughter, how much you've had to bear. And all alone, keeping it all inside. Not alone, I shook my head. With Leo. He was my support, my everything. We talked until well past midnight. As I was getting ready to leave, Dad suddenly said, "Stay the night. It's late, the tea isn't running. Your old room is free." My room. I hadn't slept there in 10 years since Leo and I bought the brownstone, but Mom supported the idea. "Really, Sophia, stay. The bed is made. I air out the room every week." I agreed. I didn't have the strength to cross Boston. My old room greeted me like a preserved past. Rock band posters on the walls, shelves with books, the old desk where I studied for exams. Mom really did keep it spotless. No dust, clean sheets that smelled of lavender, even a vase with artificial flowers just like in my childhood. I lay down in the narrow twin bed, pulling up the wool blanket I'd known since I was a girl. How many nights had I spent there dreaming of the future of love, of a family of children? It's funny how life mocks our dreams. My phone buzzed. A text from Oliver. "Found something interesting about your sister. Let's talk tomorrow." I didn't reply. I was exhausted. Tomorrow. I hoped all of this would be over soon, that justice would prevail, that Leo's memory would remain untarnished. With that thought, I sank into a deep, dreamless sleep, the first peaceful one in a week. The day began with the smell of bacon and coffee. Mom always got up early to make breakfast, a habit from when Claire and I were in school and Dad went to work at the factory. Now she cooked for herself and Dad, but always made extra just in case one of the kids, the grandson or a neighbor, dropped by. I came into the kitchen stretching. Mom was bustling at the stove, humming. Dad was at the table reading the morning paper. "Good morning," I said, kissing Mom on the cheek. "Did you sleep well?" She looked me up and down. "You look better." "Yes." "Strange, but yes." "The walls of your childhood help," Dad muttered without looking up from the paper. "I always said so." We ate breakfast in a warm silence. I felt like I was back in my childhood, the same creaks in the floor, the same smells, my parents' same gestures, as if the last 20 years hadn't happened, and I was a schoolgirl again who hadn't yet met Leo, who had yet to love and lose him. "Are you heading home?" Mom asked, clearing the table. "First, I'm stopping by Oliver's," I replied. "He found something out about Claire." "What did he find out?" Dad tensed. "I don't know yet. I'll let you know if it's important." I got ready, hugged my parents goodbye. At the door, Mom suddenly took my hand. "Sophia, whatever you find out, remember that Claire is your sister. Your only one. And Sam is not to blame." "I know, Mom." I squeezed her hand. "I don't want revenge on anyone. I just want the truth. The truth doesn't always bring relief," Mom said quietly. "Sometimes it just hurts more." I thought about her words as I walked down the stairs. What did she mean? Did she know something I didn't, or was she just repeating platitudes as older people often do to seem wiser? Outside, it was drizzling again. I opened my umbrella and walked towards the bus stop, texting Oliver as I went. "On my way. Be there in an hour. What did you find?" The reply came immediately. "A lot. And you're not gonna like it. I'll be waiting in the office." Oliver's office was quiet. The workday hadn't officially begun, and his receptionist hadn't arrived yet. I walked down the empty hallway, my heels echoing on the hardwood floor. The door to his office was ajar. I could hear voices from inside. I was about to knock, but I heard my name and froze. "It's better if Sophia doesn't know the whole truth," a man's voice unfamiliar to me was saying. "She has a right to know everything," Oliver replied, "especially now that her sister has made such accusations." "It could destroy her," the stranger insisted. "She just lost her husband. I'm afraid a blow like this." I pushed the door open and walked in. Oliver was behind his desk. Across from him sat a slim man of about 50 inches, a gray suit, with sharp eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. "What blow are we talking about?" I asked without a greeting. They both jumped and turned towards me. "Sophia." Oliver stood up. "We didn't hear you come in." I noticed I said coolly. "So, what were you talking about?" Oliver and the stranger exchanged a look. "Please sit down." Oliver gestured to the chair next to the stranger. "Let me introduce you. This is Ethan, a private investigator." I hired him to gather information on your sister. And what was so terrible that you think could destroy me, I sank into the chair, my eyes fixed on the detective. Ethan cleared his throat. Mrs. Wallace, before I begin, I must warn you, this information is not easy. I've been in this business for 20 years, and I know that facts can hurt more than any weapon. I'm ready, I cut him off. Speak. The detective took a thin folder from his briefcase. Let's start with your sister's financial situation. Claire Vargas, 32 years old. Divorced single mother to her son Sam, age 5. Works as a graphic designer at the ad agency Creative Solutions. Salary about $3,500 a month. That seems decent. But he opened the folder and began to list. Car loan $900 a month. Home renovation loan $600. Mortgage another $800. In addition, child support from her ex-husband is irregular. The last payment was 8 months ago. In total, a minimum deficit of $600 a month, not counting food, clothes, entertainment. I frowned. So she's just in debt, and that's why she decided to try and take our brownstone. If only it were that simple, the detective shook his head. It's not just debts. 3 months ago, Sam was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that requires very expensive treatment. Monthly expenses for medication and procedures are around $3,000. My breath caught in my throat. Sam is sick, seriously. Unfortunately, yes, Ethan nodded. The condition is manageable, but it requires continuous treatment. Insurance covers only the basics. The rest is out of pocket. Claire didn't tell us anything, I murmured, trying to process the information. My parents don't know. She's hiding it, the detective continued. According to my sources, only her friend Emma Moreno knows. She works at a pharmaceutical company and helps her get discounted medication. I remembered Emma. She and Claire had been inseparable since college. Claire, Emma, and Catherine. Emma was always the most sensible one with a good job at a pharma company. It made sense that Claire would turn to her. All right, I composed myself. So Claire is in debt, Sam is sick, she needs money. That explains her motive. But why make up something so twisted? Why not just ask for help? Oliver and the detective exchanged another glance. What is it? I asked impatiently. What else did you find? Ethan turned a page in his folder. We looked into Mark Gonzalez, Claire's ex-husband and Sam's legal father. It's true he works as a trucker currently in Canada, but there's a detail. According to medical records, he has blood type AB negative. Sam is A positive, and Claire is B positive. What does that mean? I'm no expert in genetics. It means Mark Gonzalez physically cannot be Sam's father, the detective explained. Genetically, it's impossible. I leaned back in my chair, trying to understand. Wait a minute. If Mark isn't the father and Leo can't be, then who? This is where we get to the most sensitive part. Ethan took out another sheet. During the investigation, I checked Claire's circle around the time of conception about 6 years ago, and I discovered that during that period, she was frequently seeing Nicholas Wallace. Which Nicholas? I asked, confused. Nicholas Wallace, the detective said, looking at me intently. Leo's father. Your father-in-law? The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the desk to keep from falling. What? How? That's a mistake. Unfortunately, it's not. The detective handed me some photos. Here's the proof. They met at the Four Seasons Hotel at least 5 times over 3 months. The dates coincide with the time of conception. I stared at the images in disbelief. Claire and Nicholas Wallace. That elegant 60-year-old man, an architecture professor, cultured, refined, entering the hotel with her holding hands, leaving together hours later. In another photo at a restaurant, him kissing her hand. In another, sitting on a park bench, her head on his shoulder. It can't be, I whispered. It's impossible. I double-checked everything the detective said in a gentle voice. There's no mistake. I even checked Nicholas Wallace's blood type from his medical history against Sam's. They are compatible for paternity. I was stunned. Nicholas Wallace, the man I adored like a father, had an affair with my sister. He could be the father of her son. But at family gatherings, they never showed any sign of knowing each other, I mumbled. They always acted like strangers. That's common in secret relationships, the detective nodded. People are most careful to hide them when they are inappropriate. So Claire is trying to blackmail the Wallaces, that's why she made up the story about Leo. Not exactly. Ethan turned another page. I found a conversation between Claire and her friend Emma. Read it yourself. He handed me a printout of some text messages. I began to read. Claire, Emma, I'm desperate. The medicine is $3K a month. Where am I supposed to get that? Emma, what about Mark? Claire, forget that loser. 8 months and not a dime. Besides, he's not Sam's dad, you know that. Emma, and the real father, can't you ask him for help? Claire, are you crazy? He's married, has a reputation, and besides, he died a month ago. Emma, who? Nicholas Wallace. Claire, yes, heart attack. Now there's no hope. Emma, what about his family? Could you tell them the truth? Claire, who? His wife Eleanor. Or Leo, hey, your dad is the father of my child. That's absurd. Emma, but Sam is his blood. They should help. Claire, you know what? I just had a better idea. The chat log ended there. I looked up at the detective. When was this? 3 days before Leo's death, he replied. And there's something else interesting. Nicholas had a life insurance policy, a considerable sum, $1.5 million. The primary beneficiary was his wife Eleanor. But a week before his death, a will appeared at the insurance company, in which part of that sum, $600,000, was to go to Claire. A will, I repeated, as fake as the one she showed me. Probably, Ethan nodded. The insurance company doubted its authenticity and opened an investigation. Then Nicholas died and Claire was denied the payout due to insufficient proof of relationship to the deceased. And so she turned to Leo, I deduced. Exactly, the detective confirmed. According to my data, she forged Leo's will right after his death. And how did she know about his infertility? I interrupted. That was our secret. It's possible from Nicholas himself, the detective surmised. If they had a close relationship, he might have told her about his son's problems. I covered my face with my hands. My head was spinning with all this information. Nicholas and Claire, Sam Nicholas's son, forged wills, Sam's illness, Claire's desperate attempts to get money for his treatment. What should I do now? I asked more to myself than to them. You have several options, Ethan said. 1, report the forgery to the police. 2, talk to your sister and offer her a deal you don't press charges and she drops her claim on the brownstone. 3, go to Mrs. Eleanor Wallace Nicholas's widow, tell her the truth, and face the problem together. I shook my head. Eleanor. She just lost her husband, then her son. This would kill her. Then you have the first 2 options, the detective nodded. Oliver, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. Sophia, I understand you're in shock, but you have to make a decision. Claire won't stop. If she's already forging documents, it means she's desperate. And a desperate person is capable of anything. I got up, walked to the window. Outside, life went on as usual. The same old Boston, people rushing cars, honking a drizzle falling, a simple, clear world. And in mine, everything was upside down. I need to think, I said. And I need to talk to Claire in person. Alone. That could be dangerous, the detective warned me. She's cornered. She's my sister, I affirmed. Whatever she's done, I have to give her a chance to explain herself. Oliver nodded. I understand, but at least let me arrange the meeting on neutral ground, a cafe or right here in the office. All right, I agreed. Here, tomorrow, I'll contact her. Oliver picked up the phone. What reason should I give for the meeting? Tell her I'm willing to discuss a peaceful settlement of the inheritance, I replied. She'll come. Leaving Oliver's office, I didn't go home. My feet took me towards the parks. I walked through the streets of Boston, then through the public garden, then along the Charles River, the favorite route of my walks with Leo. The drizzle turned into a downpour, but I barely noticed. In my head, fragments of thoughts swirled, stray phrases, memories that now fit into a completely different picture. Leo, my beloved husband, the center of my universe for 13 years. Did he know about his father's relationship with my sister? Did he suspect that Sam was his half-brother, not his nephew? What did he feel when he looked at that little boy who so resembled him? Nicholas Wallace, elegant, cultured, refined. How could he have gotten involved with my flighty sister 30 years his junior? What was he thinking when he went into hotels with her, when he kissed her hand in restaurants? Did he really love her, or was it just the adventure of an older man with a young woman? Claire, my sister with whom I shared a room, secrets, dreams. How could she with my father-in-law? And then that lie about Leo, the attempt to take our brownstone. And all for what? For money to treat her son? And Sam, an innocent child who knows nothing of the sins of adults. Sick and in need of help. I stopped in the middle of the park, soaking wet. What will I say to Claire tomorrow? How will I look her in the eye? What words will I start with? I know everything. Too dramatic. How could you? Too accusatory. Let's talk about Sam. Perhaps I should start there, because in the end, he was the only innocent one in this whole story, and his well-being had to be the priority. I took out my phone and dialed Oliver. Everything okay? He asked. Yes, I replied. The meeting with Claire is tomorrow at 11, right? Yes. Good. And one more thing. I need information on Sam's illness. Full diagnosis, prognosis, treatment costs. Can your detective get that? Of course, Oliver replied. But why do you need it? I have a plan, I said. I'll tell you tomorrow. Right now, I have to do something else. I hung up and dialed another number. Eleanor Wallace's Leo's mother. My mother-in-law who had just lost her husband and her son who didn't know her husband had an affair with my sister that she had a grandson. Sophia, her voice sounded tired. How are you, dear? I'm fine, Eleanor, I replied. And you? Getting by. I work during the day, cry at night. That's how it goes. Eleanor, can I visit you tonight? I need to talk to you. Of course, dear. I'll expect you for dinner. I put the phone away and walked towards the tea. The rain was still falling, but I didn't feel it. I already had a plan. Risky, difficult, but the only right one in this situation. Tomorrow, a tough conversation with my sister awaited me. But tonight, another no less tough conversation awaited me with my mother-in-law. The truth always hurts, but sometimes it's necessary. Like surgery, it causes pain, but it saves a life. Eleanor lived in the professor's apartment right in the heart of Beacon Hill, a spacious 4-bedroom apartment with high ceilings and bay windows. Nicholas had inherited it from his father, also an architecture professor, and it held the memories of several generations of intellectuals. Antique mahogany furniture, paintings in heavy frames, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with old volumes. I took the elevator to the 6th floor and stood for a moment in front of the door, gathering my courage. The antique mechanical doorbell rang with a harsh clatter deep inside the apartment. Eleanor opened the door. A tall, imposing woman of 65 with silver hair, pulled back in a tight bun, dressed in a sober black dress. Leo always said he inherited his love of antiques from his mother, Sophia. She embraced me with her dry but firm arms. Come in, take off your coat. You're soaking wet. I'll get you a towel. The apartment smelled of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods. Eleanor always baked when she was sad. It was her way of coping with grief. And now, after losing her husband and son within a few months of each other, she must have been spending hours in the kitchen. Thank you. I took off my shoes, hung my wet coat on the rack. I wasn't expecting such a downpour. Spring, she nodded. The most unpredictable season in Boston. Come to the kitchen. I just took a cake out of the oven. The professor's kitchen was large, but unrenovated. The same 1970s cabinets, the same formica-topped table, the same gas stove that had probably been there since Eleanor's youth. She never agreed to renovations or rearrangements. She considered them an unnecessary expense. What matters is that everything is clean and works, she used to say. And indeed, despite the old furniture, the kitchen was sparkling clean. Sit, she pointed to a chair and started serving. Tea, coffee. Tea, please. I settled into the chair, watching her precise, economical movements. Eleanor prepared the tea in an antique porcelain teapot, a true heirloom from her grandmother. She cut the cake, served it on plates, brought out a thick guava jam. Tell me. She sat across from me, resting her chin on her hand. Did something happen? You look worried? I took a deep breath. Where to begin? How do you tell this woman that her husband cheated on her with your sister, that he had a child out of wedlock, that this child was sick and needed help? Eleanor, I began cautiously, have you ever seen my nephew Sam? She thought for a moment. I think so. At Leo's birthday party last year, a charming boy, curly-haired, very active. Why? Did you think... I searched for the words that he looked like someone in your family. My mother-in-law frowned. What are you getting at, Sophia? I took a recent photo of Sam from his 5th birthday out of my purse. I handed it to her. Look closely. Who does he remind you of? She took the photo and examined it. Surprise, bewilderment, and then something like fear appeared on her face. He looks like Leo as a child, she said in a low voice. The same curls, the same shape of the eyes. But how? He doesn't look like Leo, I replied gently. He looks like Nicholas. Or rather, he looks like Leo to the extent that Leo looked like his father. Eleanor turned pale. Her hand holding the photo trembled. What are you implying? Eleanor. I gathered all my courage. I have reason to believe that Sam is Nicholas's son. The silence that fell in the kitchen was so thick it seemed tangible. Not even the ticking of the clock on the wall could be heard. Eleanor remained motionless. Only her fingers tightened on the photo until they turned white. This is some absurd joke, she finally murmured. If only it were, I sighed. I have proof. 6 years ago, Nicholas was secretly seeing my sister Claire. There are photos, witnesses, the dates match Sam's conception. She shook her head. That can't be. Nicholas was always faithful to me. 35 years. Eleanor. I gently touched her hand. I wouldn't be telling you this if I wasn't sure. And if there wasn't a very serious reason. What reason? Her voice sounded dull, distant. Sam is sick, I replied. An autoimmune disease. It requires expensive treatment. Claire is desperate. And so you come here to tarnish my husband's memory, her eyes flashed with anger, to force me to pay for someone else's child. No, I hardened my voice. I came because I believe you should know the truth, and because Sam is part of your family whether you like it or not. Eleanor stood up abruptly and went to the window. Her straight back, her tense shoulders betrayed the storm she was holding inside. A professor's wife used to maintaining composure in any situation. You come to tell me this a month after my son's burial, 3 months after my husband's death. Her voice trembled. I know, I nodded, and I'm very sorry. But there's something else you need to know. I told her about the scene at Sam's birthday, Leo's fake will, her previous attempt to claim part of Nicholas's insurance with another forged will, and that tomorrow I would be meeting with my sister, still not knowing what to do. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When I finished, she returned to the table, sat down, and clasped her hands in front of her. Are you sure Leo was sterile? She asked suddenly. Completely, I nodded. I have all the medical documentation. He knew about the doctors then, she whispered. Not the exact diagnosis, but that they were having trouble conceiving. Nicholas told me Leo suffered a lot because of it, that he felt incomplete. I nodded, unable to speak. A sudden lump of tears closed my throat. You loved him, it wasn't a question but a statement, despite everything. That never mattered, I replied. Leo was everything to me. His infertility didn't change anything. Eleanor looked at me for a long time, then lowered her gaze to the photo of Sam still clutched in her hand. He really does look like him, she whispered. The same eyes, the same line of the lips. How did I not notice it before? We see what we're prepared to see, I shrugged. No one would have thought to look for a resemblance between Sam and Nicholas Wallace. And what do you propose to do? She asked, suddenly regaining her firmness. Her tone became practical again, her gaze direct. The professor's wife was back in character. I don't know, I admitted honestly. On one hand, Claire committed a crime. She forged documents, tried to steal what wasn't hers. On the other hand, she did it for her son. To be able to treat him. She could have come and asked for help directly, Eleanor retorted harshly. If Sam is really Nicholas's son, if she can prove it, why all this circus of lies and forgeries? Pride, shame, fear, I ventured. Claire was always complicated. Maybe she just didn't know how you would react. My mother-in-law fell silent, drumming her fingers on the table. Then she stood up decisively. Wait here. She left the kitchen. I heard the door to Nicholas Wallace's study open and close. A few minutes later, she returned with a worn, leather-bound notebook in her hands. Nicholas's journal, she explained as she sat down again. He kept it for the last 10 years. I found it in the safe after the funeral, but I couldn't bring myself to read it. Until today. She opened the notebook, flipped through a few pages, and stopped at an entry. Here it is, she said, handing me the open journal. Nicholas's tight handwriting read, the 15th of April 2018. I saw the boy today. From a distance in the park, she was walking with him. I didn't dare approach. He looks so much like Leo as a child. The same curls, the same look from under his brow. My heart aches to think that I will never be able to hold him in my arms, tell him I am his grandfather, that I will never be a part of his life. This is my punishment. For a moment of weakness for betraying Eleanor for everything. I must bear this cross. But the boy is not to blame. He should not pay for my mistakes. I must devise something, some way to help him without destroying my family. Perhaps through a foundation anonymous donations. Claire is proud. She would not accept direct help. But maybe if it is through third parties. I turned the page. The 20th of April 2018. I spoke with Leo about children. He told me he and Sophia are still trying, but the chances are minimal. I saw the pain in his eyes, his feeling of inadequacy. I wanted to tell him about the boy, that he has a half-brother, but I didn't dare. It would kill him to know that the father he admires betrayed his mother, to know that I have a son with another woman while he cannot be a father. It's better to take this secret to my grave, but the boy needs help. Tomorrow I will meet with a lawyer. I want to rewrite my will. Set aside a part of the inheritance in a special account. No names, no explanations, just money that will be transferred to a certain account in the event of my death. I looked up at Eleanor. He knew. All this time. Yes, she nodded, and apparently he tried to do something, but he ran out of time. She took the journal from my hands, closed it, and placed it on the table. I must admit you are probably right, she said in a low voice. Sam is Nicholas's son, and therefore Leo's half-brother, a member of this family. I remained silent, waiting for her next words. Tomorrow you have that meeting with your sister, she continued. I want to be there. Are you sure? I asked cautiously. It could be a difficult conversation. I'm sure she nodded firmly. If Sam is really sick, if he needs help, we must provide it, but on our terms, not under the pressure of blackmail or forgeries. I looked at her with renewed respect. This woman had just learned of her husband's betrayal of the existence of an illegitimate son, and instead of collapsing or denying it, she was thinking about how to help the child. What strength, what dignity. And what do you plan to do? I asked. First, meet with your sister, she replied. Find out the truth about the boy's illness, the treatment he needs, then a DNA test to confirm paternity. And if everything is confirmed, she took a deep breath. I will recognize Sam as a member of the Wallace family with all the duties and rights that entails. And the Will Clare's attempt to take our brownstone, that is a separate matter, she said sternly. Forging documents is a crime, and I do not intend to let it go. But helping the child is separate from the punishment your sister deserves. Sam is not guilty of his mother's sins. I nodded, agreeing with her logic. Then we'll see you tomorrow at 11 at my friend Oliver's office. He's a lawyer. I jotted down the address on a piece of paper. Claire will be there. I'll be there too. She was silent for a moment, then added, Now, if you don't mind, I need to be alone. To process all of this, I stood up from the table. Of course. Thank you for listening to me. And I'm sorry I had to bring you this news. You did the right thing by coming. She walked me to the door. The truth is always better than ignorance, even when it hurts. At the door, Eleanor suddenly hugged me tightly, a maternal gesture. Leo loved you, she said in a low voice with all his heart. You were the light of his life. Don't ever forget that. I know, I whispered, tears running down my cheeks. And I loved him. Always. Walking down the stairs instead of taking the elevator, I tried to sort out my thoughts. The conversation with my mother-in-law had not been what I expected. Eleanor showed a strength and nobility that I had always sensed in her, but which I did not expect to see in such a situation. Tomorrow would be the meeting with my sister. And that would no longer be a chat between sisters, but a face-to-face between two adult women, one of whom had crossed every possible line. I went out into the street. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cool. I took a deep breath, feeling the coolness fill my lungs. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like calm, as if part of the weight I had been carrying these past few days had been lifted from my shoulders. Tomorrow, everything would be resolved. Tomorrow, I would know the truth about my sister, her motives, Sam's illness, and tomorrow I would do whatever was necessary to protect Leo's memory and at the same time help an innocent child. I hailed a cab and gave the address my home in downtown Boston, the home that Leo and I had turned into a refuge, a fortress, the same home I now had to defend from the ambitions of my own sister. On the way, I called Oliver. Hi, Eleanor will be at the meeting tomorrow. You told her everything. His voice sounded surprised. Yes, and she's an incredible woman, Oliver, stronger than I thought. What did she say? That she's willing to help Sam if he's really Nicholas Wallace's son, but she has no intention of letting the document forgery slide. Very sensible, Oliver approved. Tomorrow will be an interesting day. Yes, I agreed. Very interesting. I hung up and leaned back in the taxi seat. Outside, nighttime, Boston scrolled by. The lights of storefronts, the headlights of cars, the silhouettes of people hurrying home. A typical spring evening in the big city. Life went on despite everything. And mine would continue too. Without Leo, but with his memory in my heart, and perhaps with his half-brother who needed my help. After all, family is not just about blood. It's a choice we make every day, the choice to love, to support, to protect those we care about. And tomorrow I would have to make that choice, perhaps the most important one of my life. The morning dawned clear and crisp. A typical Boston spring. The sun was warm, but in the shade you could still feel the breath of the departing winter. I got up early, long before the alarm. In truth, I had hardly slept. I spent the night tossing and turning, rehearsing the conversation with my sister in my head, imagining different scenarios, choosing my words. What would I say? How would I look her in the eye? Where would I start this impossible dialogue? The apartment greeted me with its usual silence. I made coffee, toasted bread, but couldn't take a bite. My stomach was in knots with tension. Instead of eating, I spent half an hour in front of the mirror, carefully getting ready, not out of vanity, but to give myself confidence. A severe gray suit, minimal makeup, hair pulled back in a neat bun. The image of a businesswoman heading into a crucial negotiation, not a sister about to face a painful confrontation. I arrived at Oliver's office half an hour early. He was already there, reviewing some documents at his desk. "How are you?" he asked, looking up. "Fine," I lied. "Ready." "Eleanor," called Oliver, said. "She's on her way. We haven't heard from your sister." "She'll come," I stated confidently. "She has too much at stake." We went over the strategy for the meeting. Oliver suggested not showing all our cards at once. First, let my sister speak, let her state her claims. Then calmly dismantle her arguments with Leo's medical documents. And only then, when she had no way out, present the evidence of her relationship with Nicholas Wallace. "We need her to admit it herself," Oliver said. "Without pressure, without threats. She needs to understand that there's no point in lying anymore." I nodded. He was right. If we attacked her head-on, she would shut down, become defensive, or might even storm out. And what we wanted was a dialogue for Sam, for Leo's memory, for our family. Someone knocked on the door. Eleanor appeared in the doorway. She was wearing an impeccable navy blue suit, a pearl necklace, her back straight, her gaze firm. There was no trace of yesterday's emotions, only serenity and determination. "Good morning," she greeted Oliver with a slight nod and then shook my hand. "I'm ready." We sat around the conference table, she and I on the same side, leaving Oliver at his desk, feigning neutrality. At precisely 11 o'clock, the door opened and my sister walked in. I hadn't seen her since Sam's birthday just a week ago, but it felt like an eternity. She looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. Her usually well-kept auburn hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers, nothing like her usual stylish self. When she saw Eleanor, she froze in the doorway. "What is she doing here?" she asked, her eyes fixed on me. "Sit down, Claire," I said calmly. "She has as much to do with this conversation as you do." My sister shifted uneasily in her chair, gripping the edge of the table. "Fine." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Sam is Nicholas's son." I knew from the beginning, but I couldn't say it. How could I look my own sister in the eye and confess that I was sleeping with her father-in-law? She covered her face for a moment, breathing raggedly. Then she continued. "At first, I thought it was just a passing affair. Nicholas treated me with an attention no man had ever given me before. I was lonely, recently divorced, humiliated. He was cultured, generous. He made me feel special. When I got pregnant, I panicked. I told him, and he asked me to keep quiet. He promised to help me, but it was all just words. He never gave me anything directly. And I was left with a child and with debts." Eleanor listened motionlessly, her jaw tight, but she didn't interrupt. "When Sam got sick, my sister sobbed. The expenses became unbearable. Emma helped as much as she could, but it wasn't enough. And then Nicholas died, and with him any possibility of support. I went crazy, Sophia. I saw no way out. I thought of you, of the insurance, of the inheritance. I thought I had a right, that Sam had a right, but I didn't know how to do it any other way than by lying and forging. Yes, I faked the papers. Yes, I tried to claim what wasn't mine. But I did it for my son, only for him." Tears streamed down her cheeks. I leaned towards her and whispered, "What exactly is Sam's illness? We need to know." "It's a rare autoimmune disease," she explained, wiping her eyes. "It attacks his joints, his skin, even his organs. The monthly treatments cost over $3,000. The insurance barely covers the basics. Without the medication, Sam won't have a childhood or a future." The room was filled with a heavy silence. Oliver watched seriously, without intervening. Eleanor, Leo's mother, took a deep breath before speaking. "If what you say is true, we will do what is necessary for the child to receive treatment. But understand this, Claire, help for Sam does not erase what you did. Forging documents is a crime, and you will have to face the consequences." My sister nodded, defeated. "I'll do whatever you want. Just don't take my son from me. He's all I have." "No one is going to take him from you," I said firmly, taking her hand. "But you have to trust us and stop lying. Sam deserves a decent life, and Leo deserves for his memory not to be tarnished by intrigues and deceptions." Eleanor, my mother-in-law, leaned forward and for the first time placed her hand on my sister's. "We are going to request a DNA test. If it is confirmed that Sam is Nicholas's son, then he is part of the Wallace family. He will have our support, our protection, and our resources. But in return, you will put an end to this entire charade. Are we clear?" My sister nodded, her eyes red, with no strength to argue. In that moment, I knew the battle wasn't over, but the wall of silence and lies had cracked. For the first time, the truth was on the table, and though it hurt, it also opened the possibility of a new beginning. Claire took a deep breath as if before plunging into icy water. "Yes, Sam is Nicholas Wallace's son. We had a brief affair just 3 months. I was working at a gallery downtown, organizing an exhibition on contemporary architecture. He came in as a consultant. We started talking, and then it just happened. I didn't plan it, I didn't seek it out, if that's what you're thinking." "I'm not thinking anything," Eleanor replied evenly. "Just continue." "When I found out I was pregnant, I told him immediately. He was in shock. He offered me money for an abortion, but I refused. I had always wanted a child. At that point, he agreed to help me financially, but on the condition that no one ever knew he was the father. He had a reputation, a family, a status in society." "And you agreed?" Eleanor asked. "Yes," Claire nodded. "It suited me too. I started dating Mark. He agreed to recognize the child as his. Nicholas made monthly transfers to a special account for Sam's education, we called it. Everything was fine, until Sam got sick. I finished for her." Claire nodded, wiping away tears. 3 months ago, autoimmune hepatitis, a rare disease that requires expensive, lifelong medication. Insurance covers almost nothing. I went to Nicholas for help, but he died," I said again. "Yes," Claire lowered her head. "A heart attack. I was desperate. The money in the account was running out. Mark had been gone for a long time, not paying child support. I tried to go to the insurance company, claiming Nicholas had left part of his policy for Sam. I forged documents, but they doubted the will's validity and started an investigation. And then you decided to focus on Leo. It wasn't a question. It was a statement." "Yes," Claire admitted. "It was a desperate move. I knew it was wrong, that it could hurt you. But Sam, he needs the medicine, Sophia. Constantly, every single day. Without it, his liver will fail." She couldn't finish, breaking down in sobs again. I looked at my sister and I didn't see a scammer or a schemer, but a frightened mother willing to do anything for her son. I was flooded with conflicting emotions, anger at her lies, compassion for her situation, pity for Sam, confusion at this whole mess. "How much does the treatment cost?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "About $3,000 a month," Claire replied, wiping her tears, "plus regular checkups, tests. I sold my car, I went into debt, but it's not enough." Eleanor nodded as if making a decision and turned to me. "Sophia, what do you think about setting up a trust fund for Sam, for his treatment and education? I can contribute an initial sum from my savings, and then we can maintain it each month. Me and you, if you wish." I looked at her with surprise and admiration. This woman had just discovered her husband's betrayal and the existence of his illegitimate child yesterday, and today she was already proposing financial aid. What strength! What nobility! "I agree," I nodded. "It's the right decision. But with one condition," Eleanor continued, addressing Claire. "You will officially renounce all claims to Leo's inheritance. You will admit that the will was a forgery, and you will agree to a DNA test for Sam to confirm his parentage with Nicholas." Claire looked bewildered, glancing from me to my mother-in-law and back. You'll help Sam, after everything I did." "Sam is an innocent child," Eleanor said firmly. "He is not to blame for the mistakes of adults. And if he is truly Nicholas's son, then he is part of the Wallace family, and we take care of our own." "And you won't report me to the police?" Claire asked hopefully. "That depends on you," Oliver intervened. "If you cooperate, admit your guilt, and renounce any claim to the inheritance, it's possible we can resolve this without involving the authorities." Claire covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "I accept," she whispered. "I accept everything. Just please help Sam." I walked around the table, sat next to my sister, and put my arm around her shoulders. "Claire, why didn't you come to me from the beginning? Why all these intrigues, lies, forgeries? Did you really think I wouldn't help Sam if I knew the truth?" "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared of your judgment. Scared you would hate me for being with your father-in-law. Scared everyone would find out and Sam would grow up branded as an illegitimate child." "Nonsense." I held her tighter. "Sam is a wonderful boy whom I love with all my heart, and he is not to blame for what happened between the adults." Eleanor cleared her throat. "I propose we draft an official agreement. Sophia and I will cover the costs of Sam's treatment and education. In return, you, Claire, will acknowledge that Sam is not Leo's son and renounce any claim to his inheritance." Furthermore, you will agree to the DNA test to confirm Nicholas Wallace's paternity. Agreed, Claire nodded, wiping her tears. And one more thing, Eleanor added. I want to see Sam regularly. If he is truly Nicholas's son, then he is my grandson, and I want to be a part of his life. Claire nodded again, unable to speak. Then it settled. Eleanor turned to Oliver. Can you prepare the necessary documents? Of course. He was already pulling forms from a drawer. This will take a little while. Would you ladies like some coffee? We accepted. Oliver left to ask his assistant to bring the drinks. A heavy, awkward silence filled the office thick with unexpressed emotions. Claire, I broke the silence. Why Nicholas? How did it all happen? My sister shrugged. I don't even know myself. He was different, not like the guys my age who only think about themselves. Smart, cultured, attentive. He knew how to listen. He made me feel special. It didn't last long, but... Did you love him? Eleanor asked suddenly. Claire looked at her frightened. No. I mean, not in the way you think. He was a mentor, a friend. Romantic feelings just happened. But I knew he had a family that it wouldn't be forever. Eleanor nodded as if receiving confirmation of something she already knew. Sam looks like him, she said quietly. The same eyes, that same sidelong glance. Leo was exactly the same as a child. I noticed the resemblance, Claire confessed, but I thought no one else would see it, that everyone would believe the story with Mark. And does he know? I asked. Mark, I mean, that he's not Sam's father. He suspects, I suppose, Claire shrugged. We never talked about it. He just disappeared from our lives when Sam was 3. Since then, he calls once every 6 months, sometimes sends money. Oliver returned with a tray holding 4 cups of coffee and a small plate of cookies. We drank in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Sam doesn't know, Claire said suddenly, about his real father. He thinks Mark is his dad, just a very busy one who rarely visits. What should I tell him? When he's older and starts asking, tell him the truth, Eleanor replied. At the right time, in the right way. But the truth. Lies never bring any good, Claire. You should have learned that lesson. Claire lowered her head. I know. Forgive me for everything. I cannot forgive you now, Eleanor said calmly. Perhaps in time. But I can and will help Sam. It is not the same thing. I understand, Claire murmured. Oliver returned with the prepared documents, and we spent the next hour discussing the details of the agreement. According to it, Claire officially renounced all claims to Leo's inheritance, acknowledging that her statement about his paternity was false. In return, Eleanor and I committed to creating a trust fund for Sam, from which his treatment, education, and other needs would be paid. Claire agreed to the DNA test to confirm Nicholas's paternity and, most importantly, pledged not to interfere with Sam's relationship with Eleanor or me. When the last signature was penned, I felt a strange sense of relief, as if a huge weight I had been carrying on my shoulders for the past few days had suddenly disappeared. Not completely, of course. A part of it will always remain with me, a memory of losing Leo. But at least this problem was solved, and in the best possible way. I want to see Sam, Eleanor said when we were done with the paperwork. As soon as possible. Of course, Claire nodded. He's at my mom's house right now. I can bring him over this afternoon or tomorrow. Today, Eleanor said decisively. And Sophia will come too. We need to start building a relationship again. All of us together. I nodded. Agreed. It was the right thing to do. Not to postpone, not to let the wounds fester, but to start a new chapter immediately. When we left Oliver's office, it was drizzling again outside. Claire said a clumsy goodbye, avoiding my eyes. Sophia, I'm so ashamed. I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. I don't know, Claire, I answered honestly. I need time, but for Sam, for our parents, for Leo's memory, I'll try. We hugged awkwardly like strangers. So many years together, and now a chasm between us, one that we might never fully cross. Claire left, and Eleanor and I stood under the awning watching the drizzle. And now what? I asked. Now we live, she answered simply. We raise Sam, help him, love him. It's the only thing we can do. It's the only thing that matters. I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. Eleanor suddenly hugged me, tightly with a mother's tenderness. You're strong, Sophia. Leo would be proud of you, and I am. I buried my face in her shoulder, finally letting myself cry, not from pain or anger, but from relief. Relief that the worst was over, that now we could start anew. We stood like that for a long time, 2 women united not by blood, but by shared loss, shared pain, and shared hope. Two women who had just made a difficult but right decision, two women ready to build a new family on the ruins of the old one. The rain intensified, but we didn't notice. Ahead of us was the afternoon and a meeting with Sam, the first of many to come. The first step on a long road to healing. The afternoon turned out to be quiet and warm, an unexpected gift from the capricious Boston spring. I stood by the window of Eleanor's apartment watching the last rays of sun paint the rooftops of Beacon Hill gold. From the kitchen came clattering sounds. Eleanor was preparing a feast for Sam. I could hear the clinking of cups, the rustle of candy bags, the thud of the refrigerator door. Eleanor was nervous, though she tried to hide it. I noticed it in her small, hurried movements, so unlike her usual composed manner. I was nervous, too. Today we would see Sam for the first time not as a nephew or an acquaintance, but as a close relative, a family member, Nicholas's grandson. How would the boy react to a new grandmother and a new dynamic with his aunt? What had Claire told him about the visit? How much truth can a 5-year-old child understand and accept? The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Eleanor came out of the kitchen, nervously adjusting her hair. "They're here." I nodded, and together we went to open the door. In the doorway stood Claire, holding Sam's hand. The boy was wearing a button-down shirt and trousers, his hair neatly combed, his shoes shined. In his hands he held a small bouquet of violets, clearly picked from a nearby park. "Good afternoon," he said, seriously extending the bouquet to Eleanor. "This is for you. Mommy said you're my new grandma." Eleanor stood motionless for a moment, then knelt to his height. "Hello, Sam. Thank you for the flowers, they're beautiful. Yes, I am your grandmother. You can call me Grandma Ellie if you like." The boy nodded as if accepting a deal. His gaze was serious, appraising, not childish at all. "And I already know Aunt Sophie," he said, looking at me. "She's married to Uncle Leo, who's in the sky like an astronaut." I knelt beside him. "That's right, Sam, and we are very happy you came to visit us." "Come in," Eleanor said, standing up and stepping aside. "I've made tea and cupcakes." We entered the living room, a large space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. Antique furniture, paintings in heavy frames, bookshelves filled with old volumes. Everything breathed history and culture. Sam looked around with unconcealed curiosity. "It looks like a museum in here," he commented. "It's nice." "Thank you," Eleanor smiled. "This apartment belonged to my husband, your grandfather. He was a professor of architecture, just like his father." Grandfather Sam looked at Claire with a question in his eyes. "Yes, sweetie." Claire knelt beside him. "Remember what I told you today, that your real daddy isn't Mark, but someone else who isn't with us anymore." Sam frowned. "Grandpa Nicholas, who was a scientist and died of a heart attack." "Yes," Claire nodded. "He was Uncle Leo's daddy. And your daddy. It's complicated, I know. But Grandma Ellie was his wife, so she is your grandmother." Sam stood thoughtfully processing the information. For a 5-year-old, it was a lot to take in, but he seemed to grasp the essence. "So, Uncle Leo was my brother." "Yes," I replied in a low voice. "Your older brother." "And did he know?" the boy asked, surprising us with his unchildlike perception. Eleanor and I exchanged glances. She was the one who clarified. "No, Sam, he didn't know. It was a family secret, but now we all know the truth and we want you to be part of our family." Sam nodded, accepting the explanation. "Okay, do you have any toys?" The tension dissipated and we all smiled involuntarily. Children are incredibly practical and direct. After resolving complex issues of kinship and family secrets, Sam returned to the most important matter for a 5-year-old. "I'm afraid not," Eleanor admitted, "but I have something that might interest you." She left the room and returned with a small wooden box. This belonged to Leo when he was a boy, his coin collection. She opened the box and Sam let out a "whoa." Inside were coins of different shapes and sizes, carefully arranged in compartments. Each had a small label, a buffalo nickel, a mercury dime, a steel penny. "Wow," Sam stroked the coins reverently. "Can I look at them?" "Of course," Eleanor nodded. "In fact, I want you to have this collection. Leo started collecting it when he was your age. I think he would be happy for you to have it." Sam looked at his mother as if asking for permission. She nodded. "That's a wonderful gift, Sam. What do you say?" "Thank you, Grandma Ellie," the boy said solemnly. I saw Eleanor's lips tremble. We moved on to tea. Sam, fascinated with his new collection, was arranging the coins on the table, examining them from all angles. Eleanor told him about each coin, where it was from, its history, how it was used. The boy listened, engrossed, asking questions, asking to see the countries on a map where this or that coin came from. I watched them, feeling a strange peace. They had found a common language, the retired professor's wife and the little boy united not only by blood but by a genuine interest in each other. Eleanor was a natural teacher and Sam a curious student. In that, he reminded me of Leo, who always wanted to learn something new, to understand how any mechanism worked, to get to the bottom of things. Claire, Sam's mother, sat next to me tense and cautious. I understood her state. She was afraid that Eleanor and I would take her son from her, that we would occupy too much space in his heart. I gently touched her hand. "It's okay, Claire. No one is trying to replace you. We just want to be part of his life." She smiled faintly. "I know. It's just, all of this is so unexpected. Just yesterday I was desperate, not knowing how to get the money for his medicine. And today, Sam has a new family that wants to help him. It feels like a fairy tale." "Not exactly a fairy tale," I shook my head. "It's more like setting things right. Sam was always part of the Wallace family, we just didn't know it." After tea, Eleanor showed Sam around the apartment. The library with rare architectural books, Nicholas's study with his collection of antique drafting instruments, the sunroom with exotic plants. The boy was delighted, especially with the telescope set up on the balcony. "Can I look at the stars?" he asked. "Of course," Eleanor nodded. "But it's still light out. Come back another night and we'll have a real astronomical observation." "Really, I can come back again?" Sam was overjoyed. "Of course," she smiled. "You can always come here now. This is your home too." As it started to get dark, Claire prepared to go home. Sam has a bedtime routine, and he needs to take his medicine on time. "Of course," Eleanor agreed. "But before you go, I have a proposal. Tomorrow is Saturday. How about we all go to the country together? I have a small house in the Berkshires. The air is wonderful. There's a forest, a lake. Sam could play in nature, and we could talk about the details of his treatment and everything else." Claire looked at me doubtfully. "And you'll come too?" "If you don't mind," I replied. "But I understand if you three want to be alone." "No," my sister shook her head. "Please come with us. We all need to get used to this new arrangement." "Then it's settled," Eleanor nodded. "Tomorrow at 10 I'll send a car for you." We said our goodbyes. Sam hugged Eleanor and me, and with the box of coins in his hand, walked towards the door. In the doorway, he suddenly turned around. "Grandma Ellie, will you tell me about Grandpa Nicholas? What was he like?" "Of course I will," she promised. "I have many photos, letters, memories. You will learn all about your father." Sam nodded, satisfied with the answer, and left holding his mother's hand. When the door closed, Eleanor sank into an armchair, suddenly looking small and old before my eyes. That was intense. "You were amazing," I said sincerely. "Sam is fascinated with you." "He's a wonderful boy," she whispered, "so intelligent, so curious, just like Leo as a child. The same eyes, the same gaze, and he looks so much like Nicholas. I see it so clearly now." I sat beside her. "Are you really ready to accept him into the family after everything Claire did?" "Yes," she replied firmly. "Sam is Nicholas's son, a part of my husband that is still alive, and he is Leo's brother whom we both lost. How could I turn my back on him?" "And what about Claire?" I asked cautiously. "Will you be able to forgive her?" Eleanor was thoughtful. "Not now. Maybe in time. But I can coexist with her for Sam's sake. That's the most I can do for now." I nodded, understanding her feelings. Claire's betrayal was still too fresh, too painful to simply forget. But for Sam, we were all willing to make compromises. "And now what?" I asked, repeating the same question from yesterday. "Now we build a new family," Eleanor answered. "Not like the one before, but a family nonetheless, with Sam at the center." I nodded in agreement. We had a long road ahead of us, Sam's treatment, strengthening the relationships between all the members of this strange new family, legal matters related to inheritance and recognition of his parentage. But today, we took the first step. And it was successful. On the way home, I felt a strange calm, as if a part of me broken by Leo's death was slowly beginning to heal. Not completely, of course, that wound would never fully heal. But now I had a new purpose, a new meaning, to help raise the boy who was my husband's brother, to preserve Leo's memory for Sam, to tell him what a wonderful person his older brother was. I entered our brownstone empty silence saturated with memories of Leo. Before that silence weighed on me, crushed me. Now I perceived something different in it, serenity, peace, acceptance. Leo was gone, but a part of him lived on in Sam, and I would take care of that child as if he were our own son. I went to our photo on the mantelpiece. "You know," I whispered, touching the glass, "your brother is incredible, just as smart and curious as you. I'm sure you would have been great friends. I will take care of him, I promise." He will know what a wonderful person his older brother was. Was it my imagination, or did Leo's photo seem to brighten a little? Of course it was just a trick of the light. But in that moment I felt his warm, approving, encouraging presence, as if he were telling me, "You're doing everything right. I'm proud of you." I smiled through my tears. Ahead of me was a new day and a new life full of unexpected turns, difficulties, and perhaps joys, a life in which I was no longer alone. Tomorrow we would go to the country, walk in the woods, breathe fresh air, watch Sam play by the lake. We would talk about his treatment, his future, our new family. We would learn to live on with the memory of those we lost and the care of those who remained. And perhaps that was the great lesson of this whole story. Family is not just blood or documents or a common surname. Family is the choice we make every day, the choice to love, to forgive, to support, the choice to be there no matter what. I had made my choice, and I would follow it to the end. 1 year later, Eleanor's country house in the Berkshires was bathed in the June sunlight. The apple trees in the garden had already bloomed, their white petals falling to the ground like snow in midsummer. From the porch, you could hear childish laughter. Sam was playing with a new building, set a gift for his 6th birthday. I sat in a wicker chair with a book, glancing at the boy from time to time. He had grown in that year, gotten stronger, his cheeks rosy. Regular treatment, fresh air, good food, and above all, the love and care of our unusual family had worked their magic. The disease had gone into remission. Not completely, of course. Sam still needed medication, but the doses were smaller and the doctor's prognoses had become optimistic. Eleanor came out of the house with a tray holding steaming cups of tea and a blueberry pie. She had taken up baking over the past year, finding a strange comfort in the kitchen. "Tea is ready," she announced. "Sam, go wash your hands." "Coming, Grandma Ellie." The boy carefully set down his building set and ran towards the house. "I helped Eleanor set out the cups," Claire called. "She and Oliver will be here around 4. "Perfect," my mother-in-law nodded. "I've made up a room for them." "And for your parents, too. They're coming tomorrow, right?" "Yes." Dad took the weekend off specifically to spend all of Sunday with Sam. He wants to teach him to play chess. So much had changed in our relationship. Eleanor had transformed from a strict mother-in-law into a close friend, almost a mother to me. We talked a lot about Leo, reminiscing about his habits, his laugh, his dreams. We shared memories with Sam, who eagerly absorbed every story about his older brother. My relationship with Claire had also changed. Not immediately, of course. The first few months were difficult, filled with awkwardness and silence. But slowly, seeing how Sam blossomed under our shared care, we found a way to coexist. Not as close as we once were, but peacefully. Sunday, family lunches, joint celebrations, summer trips to the country. All of this became part of our new reality. And 6 months ago, another change occurred. Claire started dating Oliver, my lawyer friend. Who would have thought? I was surprised myself when they announced their relationship, but watching them, I understood it wasn't just a passing fling. Oliver accepted Sam as his own, spent time with him, helped with his treatment. And Claire, by his side, transformed, calmer, more confident, softer. Sam returned with clean hands, and we sat down for tea. Eleanor cut the pie and served the plates. The boy eagerly dug into his dessert, chattering about his accomplishments at school. He had started 1st grade last September at a school with a focus on math. "I got an A on my test," he boasted, devouring his pie. "The teacher said, I have a mathematical mind." "You get that from Grandpa Nicholas?" Eleanor nodded. "He was also very good at the exact sciences." "And Leo was great at math, too," I added. Sam nodded, as always absorbing information about his relatives. In a year, he had learned a lot about his real father and his brother. On his bedroom wall hung their photos, and on his nightstand was a frame with a family photo, all of us in front of the country house. Eleanor, me, Claire, my parents, Oliver, and in the center, Sam grinning from ear to ear with a chessboard in his hands, his new passion. "When I grow up, I'm going to be an architect, like Grandpa and Uncle Leo," Sam announced, licking his spoon. "I'm going to build beautiful houses." "You can be whatever you want to be," I smiled at him. "The important thing is that it makes you happy." After tea, Eleanor took Sam into the garden. They had planned a salt crystal growing experiment, part of the educational program the grandmother had designed for her grandson. I stayed on the porch listening to their voices, one childish, clear and cheerful, the other soft with a teacher's intonations. My gaze fell on the photo of Leo on the table. I always carried it with me wherever I went. A year had passed, but the pain of loss hadn't completely disappeared. It had just become quieter, deeper, more serene. I had learned to live with it, like living with a chronic illness, not letting it define your whole life, but never forgetting it's there. The phone rang. It was Professor Morales's number, my new friend, partner. It was hard to define. We met 6 months ago at an architectural restoration exhibition dedicated to Leo's memory. Daniel Morales, an ethics professor at Boston University. A widower serious, a man of few words but with an unexpected sense of humor. We started going out first just as friends to exhibitions to the theater, then we started calling each other almost every day. And a month ago he kissed me for the first time tentatively, as if afraid of my reaction. I wasn't ready for a new relationship. Maybe I never would be completely. But life went on and I felt that Leo wouldn't have wanted me to be alone. "Hello," I answered, moving towards the edge of the porch. "Hi." Daniel's voice was warm. "How are you? How's Sam?" "Everything's perfect," I smiled. "Sam is growing crystals with Eleanor. Claire and Oliver are coming for dinner, my parents tomorrow. A full house." "I'm glad to hear that." There was a sincere warmth in his voice. "Do you want some company? I could come up tomorrow?" "Yes." "Come," I interrupted, surprised by my own decision. "Everyone would be happy to see you, especially me." We chatted for a few more minutes, arranging the details of his visit. When I hung up, I noticed Eleanor standing beside me. "Daniel?" she asked with a slight smile. "Yes," I nodded. "He's coming tomorrow, if you don't mind." "Of course I don't mind." She squeezed my hand. "He's a good man, Sophia, and Leo would be happy that you're not alone." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Eleanor, more than anyone, understood my feelings. She herself had gone through the loss of her husband. She had learned to move on, to find joy in caring for her grandson, in new interests and activities. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "sometimes I think none of this was a coincidence. Claire, Sam, even Nicholas's affair. As if some higher power knew Leo would leave us early and prepared a consolation for us. A child in whom a part of Nicholas and Leo lives on." I had never thought of it that way, but there was a strange logic in her words. Sam had truly become the center of our new life, the reason we all came together, overcoming grudges, jealousy, and betrayal. "Maybe you're right," I agreed. "In any case, I'm grateful that we have Sam, and that we have each other." Eleanor gave me a quick but firm hug. "Go to them," she told me. "Sam wanted to show you his experiment." I went into the garden where Sam was working over a jar with a saline solution, carefully lowering a thread with a seed crystal into it. "Aunt Sophie," he exclaimed when he saw me. "Look, my crystal has started to grow. Grandma Ellie says it will be big in a week." I knelt beside him, admiring his creation. "That's great. You're a real scientist. Like Grandpa Nicholas." "Yes," he said proudly. "Grandma told me he loved experiments too." "That's right. And do you know who's coming tomorrow, Professor Daniel, my friend? He's a scientist too, but he studies human actions, not crystals. Ethics." I know, Sam nodded. "Mommy said you like him. And that's good, right? So you're not lonely." I smiled, surprised by his childish frankness and wisdom. "Yes, Sam, it's good. Although I'm not lonely. I have you and Grandma Ellie and your mom and my parents." "But it's different," the boy said seriously. "Uncle Leo wanted you to be happy. He always said so when he picked me up from daycare, that the most important thing was for his Sophie to be smiling." I froze. "Leo picked you up from daycare?" "Yeah," sometimes Sam nodded as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "When Mommy was late at work, he would get me and wait with me on the bench outside. We talked about cars and dinosaurs. He was really fun." I looked at him, unable to speak a word. Leo knew. All that time he had known who Sam was. Maybe not with absolute certainty, maybe he just suspected, but he felt it recognized him, looked after him. And he never told me anything. To not hurt me, to not force me to choose between him and my sister. "Aunt Sophie, are you crying?" I touched my cheek and felt the tears. "No, sweetie," I smiled through them. "Just got something in my eye. Tell me more about your experiment." Sam enthusiastically returned to his explanations, and I listened, thinking about Leo. About his kindness, his wisdom, his ability to love unconditionally without asking for anything in return. Evening was falling. The sun was approaching the horizon, painting the garden in golden hues. In the distance, the sound of a car engine. Claire and Oliver were arriving. Sam abandoned his experiment and ran to greet his mother. I remained on the bench watching the sunset. A year ago, standing in front of my husband's freshly dug grave, I thought my life was over. That without Leo, there would be no more joy, no meaning, no future. I was wrong. Life went on complicated, confusing, sometimes painful, but still beautiful, full of unexpected turns, new discoveries, surprising bonds. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. If Daniel would become an important part of my life or remain just a friend. If Sam would fully recover, or if the illness would always be with him. If Claire and Oliver's relationship would become something serious. If Eleanor and Claire would ever truly forgive each other. But I knew one thing: whatever happened, we would face it together. Our strange, imperfect, but strong family. I got up from the bench and went to greet the guests. An evening full of conversations, laughter, and plans for the future awaited us. Life awaited us. The same life about which Leo always said, "Sophie, life is beautiful even when it's terrible. Sometimes you just have to look at it from a different angle." I smiled, looking at the setting sun. He was right, as always. Life is truly beautiful even when it breaks you, when it tests you, when it takes away what seemed irreplaceable. You just have to learn to look at it from a different angle and find the strength to move on with the memory of the past, but with a heart open to the future. That was what I planned to do, day by day, step by step. For me, for Sam, and for Leo, who would have wanted his Sophie to be smiling. And I was smiling through the tears, through the pain, through everything I had been through, because I knew that love is stronger than death, stronger than betrayal, stronger than deceit. And as long as we are capable of love, we are alive, truly alive. And if this story has also touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us every day to continue sharing new and exciting stories. On the main screen, you can already find our next story. We wish you all the best and much happiness in your life.